Forget banshees, armoured tanks, and metal gears, the hype train is the most unstoppable vehicle in gaming. No matter how hard we try to tame our excitement for the next big releases, most of us wind up buying a ticket on that railroad of disappointment. Fans get burned time after time, drawn in by dazzling CGI cinematics or supposed in-engine teasers that don't truly represent a given studio's finished product. Though the end fault might lie with us as petulant and undiscerning consumers, it begins with the publishers and the marketers who sell their wares based on pure fabrication. While there is no excuse for raving tantrums about how a dishonest video game trailer, oh, did it ruin your life, did it? There's also no defense for a company that brazenly lies to your face whilst pocketing your cash. E3 alone has a sordid history when it comes to misleading trailers and soundbites, and while such practices might succeed in securing initially high sales, the resulting backlash is often far more trouble than it's worth. My name is Rach, welcome back to WhatCulture Gaming, and these are 10 video games that were sold on lies. Number 10. Fable The Journey. Peter Molyneux deserves his own section on this list, but for the sake of brevity, it's best to focus on his most easily digestible untruths. The Fable creator has a long and depressing history when it comes to telling porcupines. Godus spectacularly failed to deliver on its most infamous promise that the winner of their competition would appear in the game as an all-powerful deity. Even the original Fable, a game that was otherwise very well received, shall forever be synonymous with broken promises. While hyping up his new fantasy franchise, Peter went a little off-book and promised that if players knocked an acorn from a tree, a new tree would grow there in its place. Yeah, never even came close to that, did it? His most blatant lie came while promoting Fable The Journey, a Kinect exclusive game about riding a horse and cart. Molyneux claimed on several occasions that the game wouldn't be on rails, but players were unsurprised to find that the journey was indeed completely linear. Number 9. Project Milo and the Kinect. Speaking of Kinect, very rarely has an entire console or peripheral been sold on such a shaky foundation of truth. Such was the case with Project Milo, which was also demonstrated by Peter Molyneux at E3 in 2009. Molyneux announced that the Kinect technology would be used in a game called Milo and Kate, a story-driven adventure wherein players could interact with a young child and a dog. The child was shown responding to words and phrases in real time, as well as the emotional tone in which they were expressed. The game never actually saw the light of day, however, and its legitimacy remains somewhat doubtful. This was only the first in a long line of tricks and fibs that were used to sell the Kinect. Watching the Milo demonstration back, you almost feel sorry for Molyneux. What this industry does with this will change the landscape of games that we play, he says, when in actual fact, we got a load of voice command gimmicks, a frickin' dancing Han Solo, and yet more plastic tat to store next to our DJ Hero deck. Number 8. Assassin's Creed Unity. Back in 2014, when Assassin's Creed Unity was under development, Ubisoft had already released multiple hugely successful entries of the franchise, most notably of which was Black Flag from the previous year, which became one of the best-selling games of 2013. People loved the Assassin's Creed series and Ubisoft knew it. However, getting these games out in such quick succession was not an easy feat, and it's a wonder that the studio managed to churn out entry after entry with such a high bar of quality. In 2013, Ubisoft made a defining statement when questioned about this production process. According to them, if an Assassin's Creed title didn't meet standards, the development team would certainly delay the release of the game. Flash forward a year to the release of Unity, and it becomes clear that this statement was indeed a massive lie. Unity shipped absolutely riddled with bugs, glitches, and performance issues, and had to be massively overhauled in post-launch patches to get it up to standard. Certainly not what fans were promised at all. Number 7. Spore. Expectations were high going into Spore, not least because it was the latest game from The Sims designer Will Wright. EA made plenty of lofty claims about Spore's procedural generation, and in demonstrations they revealed several gameplay features that were eventually cut. While this does tend to happen a lot throughout the course of game development, it's staggering just how many parts of the demo littered the cutting room floor. Spore's creatures looked a lot more realistic back in 2005 when compared to their more comical 2008 counterparts. There were also features like underwater life and editing tools that were completely removed. This isn't as knowingly dishonest as showing off false gameplay footage that you know doesn't represent your final product, but it is careless. Teasing your game at such an early stage in its life cycle is bound to leave people feeling disappointed when it ultimately undergoes changes. Perhaps in this instance, a non-gameplay CGI trailer might have been preferable. Number 6. Watch Dogs. No matter how many times it happens, it will always be perplexing to discover that a developer has embellished gameplay footage for the purpose of hype. Ubisoft is no stranger to the concept, but Watch Dogs still stands out as the company's most heinous offender. Although the retail version of Watch Dogs remained mechanically intact, its visuals had been severely hamstrung since the game's 2012 reveal. After several development delays, fans were shocked to find that the finished product looked vastly inferior to videos that had sold them on the concept. Gone was the wind, dust, and smoke seen in the reveal, and the game's glossy neon-tipped blacks and blues had been replaced by a murky layer of brownish grey, as though Aiden Pierce had draped his coat over your TV. People felt betrayed because they had gotten so hyped for the most groundbreaking open-world game since Grand Theft Auto 3. The game did look impressive in 2014, just not E3 2012 impressive. Number 5. Mass Effect 3. Everyone knows the tale of Mass Effect 3's crucial story relegated to DLC setup by now, and regardless of how maddeningly stupid the Starchild ending was, fans were most angry about having a 100+ hour epic reduced to a game of simply pick a card, any card. The game's director, Casey Hudson, had gone on record as saying that the ending would be greatly affected by your choices up until that point, although it's entirely possible that his vague proclamations were simply misinterpreted. Mass Effect 3's final galaxy-shattering battle did change depending on your decisions, as well as your multiplayer exploits, but the 15 minutes that followed said battle followed a pretty strict and linear path. People didn't exactly react with grace and poise to that. While some tried to explain away the events of the ending with the admittedly solid indoctrination theory, others hurled abuse at BioWare or sent red, green and blue cupcakes to their offices as a snide gesture of contempt. Can we all just take a moment to appreciate that level of passive aggressiveness from sending someone angry cake? Number 4. Tom Clancy's The Division. The Division's first act of truth manipulation appears in its name. Like the majority of games attributed to Tom Clancy, the acclaimed author actually had very little to do with the development on The Division. He passed away 3 years before it was released. But that's not the only way Ubisoft pulled the wool over our eyes. Like Watch Dogs before it, the finished version of The Division was graphically inferior to footage first shown at E3. The differences weren't quite as glaring, but the trailer itself did come with some of its own unique quirks, namely the inclusion of scripted in-game chat. Rather than have players showcasing the game live in order to record their genuine experiences, voice actors were hired to dub lines over already embellished footage.
Oh, what's up, Chris? Welcome to the battle, dude.
In yet another example, the creative director stated that the game would not contain microtransactions. Surprise, surprise, the game had microtransactions. Add that to the fact that the servers struggled to cope with the game's player base on launch. People were actually queuing up to use a laptop in the first mission area. Unbelievable. Number 3. Killzone 2. It's hard to believe that anyone fell for this one, but back in 2005 we weren't quite so savvy. Killzone 2's reveal trailer at E3 was far too glossy to have been comprised of in-game footage, and later was revealed to be a target render, a video package designed to accurately portray what the finished product would look like. Assumedly, Guerrilla Games did not yet possess footage that they deemed worthy of showing to the public. It happens all the time nowadays. The difference is most trailers of this kind are clearly watermarked as not gameplay footage. Killzone 2 actually wound up looking fairly similar to its pre-render, mainly because the animation quality and graphical fidelity improved a lot between 2005 and the time of the game's release in 2008. The key difference is the player character's first-person animations, which are just plain unnatural. Number 2. Aliens Colonial Marines. Colonial Marines will forever remain the game that was finally going to give Xenomorph fans the game that they deserved, only to release as a buggy trash fire. A murky and slapdash piece of software cobbled together with seemingly no consideration for what made the Alien franchise work in the first place. Upon release, the internet was flooded with videos depicting dancing xenomorphs, broken AI, and muddy textures. This would have been bad enough in isolation, but considering that the game we had been sold at E3 2012 was so radically different to the one filling up the trade-in shelves, emotions started to morph from confusion and disappointment to pure anger. For a start, the game fans bought was missing a lot of the textures, shadowing, dynamic lighting, and cinematics that had been trailered at E3. The inevitable fallout was something to behold. The debacle almost cost Gearbox its credibility, as fans rushed to proclaim CEO Randy Pitchford as a liar and a con man, and he did eventually wind up being sued for false advertising. Number 1. No Man's Sky. Perhaps the most egregious example of a developer lying to its audience, No Man's Sky may well prove to be the straw that broke the E3 hype train's back. In a series of visually stunning gameplay demos, Hello Games sold No Man's Sky as a space exploration game in which anything could happen. It was a universe of 18 quintillion planets, with you at the centre. The finished product left a lot to be desired and was missing core gameplay elements that had been teased. Instead of the open-world sci-fi epic that we were promised, No Man's Sky was a fairly middling survival crafting game, albeit with its procedurally generated elements turned up to 11. A lot of players were hit with glitches, frequent texture pop-ins, and even game-breaking bugs upon launch, which led to speculation about the legitimacy of the game's E3 demos. Worst of all, players were confused to find no multiplayer component within the game, despite being promised on several occasions that No Man's Sky would include multiplayer lobbies, and that players could meet each other on different planets. When such features never materialized, the backlash was insane, although not entirely unprovoked. And that's our list. I mean, game developers are only human, right? But oh god, it's still so annoying. Let us know any other examples you might have in the comments below. You can like, share, don't forget to subscribe for lists like these every single day. Once again, my name has been Rach. You can follow me on Twitter, if you like, at Don'tRageQuit. We love you. We hope you're well. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Bye, guys.